Welcome to the Fandom Portals podcast, a podcast that explores how fandoms can help us learn and grow. Today we have an episode that has been a long time in the making. I am joined once again by Luke Newton, and he is the perfect guest to talk everything Avatar: The Last Airbender. He featured in an episode early on in the Fandom Portals run. I think it was episode 12 or something like that. But you should go and see it because we talked about book one, the Air Book, and now we're back again to talk about book two, the Earth Book, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Luke, how are you going today? It's good to have you back on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Aaron. Glad to be back.
Good to have you back, man. Good to have you back.
Talk
Now,
everything Avatar.
yeah, everything Avatar. We just did a little test as well because we wanted to see what the internet thought our preferred bending was. And do you want to reveal to our amazing audience what you got, Luke?
Yeah, I got Earthbender, which I'm not mad about. Obviously, my favorite element is fire, so it is what it is. But to be fair, I like all the elements pretty equally. But I'll take it. I'll take Earthbending.
Yeah, they all have their definite upsides. I got firebending, which is my favorite, and also one that I think pretty well fits me also. So my favorite character through the series is Zuko. He's a firebender, so I can't complain about that either. But yeah, it's been good. All right. So we're going to start off by looking at, well, actually, I'll tell you what we're doing in this podcast first. So in this episode, guys, you're going to learn all about the character arcs for book two. We're going to look at Aang, Zuko, and Toph, and we might jump into Azula there a little bit as well. We're going to talk about some of the most meaningful episodes to myself and to Luke, and we're going to look at some hot takes from our Fandom Portals community and have a chat about some of the questions you guys have sent in as well. But before we do that, the very first thing we're going to do is going to update you on all the Avatar news so you guys can know exactly what is coming out in the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender at time of recording, which is 2025 in June. So, what are you most excited for, Luke, that's coming out from the Avatar world so far?
Well, I do know that they are making a new Earthbending series. So I'm looking forward to that. But I think most keen for is the new adult animated feature that they're doing. I know it's been delayed a couple times. I'm not too sure exactly when it's coming out, but yeah, I'm most looking forward to that because it'd be interesting to see how they deal with the characters that we all know and love, aged up a bit. I believe they're in their 20s, or I think Sokka's in his 30s or something. So really cool to see how they approach that.
Yeah. And I've got the information here. It is going to be called The Legend of Aang, The Last Airbender. It's an animated movie. It has been delayed and is now set to be released on the 9th of October 2026. So a little bit of a ways off. It says that this movie will be a sequel to the original animated series and it's focusing on those adult versions of Aang and his friends. I know we get tidbits of that in Korra because we see all the ancestors of these characters as well, but I think it'll be good to dive into seeing exactly kind of what they did after the series has concluded.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's obviously not really explored too much apart from the flashbacks with Korra, but it doesn't really give you like a big picture of like what they did, what happened and stuff, what sort of adversities they faced. So it'd be interesting to see how they approach it.
Well, so far we've got Eric Nam, who is coming to voice Aang in this series, and Dave Bautista is set to be in a role as the antagonist. I don't know what character he's going to play, and I don't know if he's done any voice acting before.
I know he's been dipping his toes in a few different genres of film and stuff like that. I can't recall if he's been in any animated stuff, but I'm sure he's going to kill it anyway.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's probably one of the wrestler turned actors that is my favorite to watch because of his range. And as you know, he moved away from the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then he started working with like directors like M. Night Shyamalan, and he's just exploded from there. And even in Blade Runner 2049, if you've seen that, his small role in that was he just kicked goals everything that he did. So very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
All right, and Avatar: Seven Heavens is what the new animated series is called as it's coming out. The release date is set to premiere sometime in 2027. I believe that has also been delayed a few times as well. It's said that the protagonist in this one is going to be an earthbender. It's set after the time of Avatar and Korra, and it's also been revealed that apparently this is going to be set in an Avatar-esque modern time. So our time, basically. And we know that Korra sort of hits that sort of steampunk industrial revolution phase, and Avatar: The Last Airbender is much before that. How do you think they're going to approach looking at the Avatar world and having the Avatar in a real world setting? And it says here as well that it's also supposed to be set after the events of a cataclysm, so a big world shattering event.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. I heard that it was like very much apocalyptic type environment. So it should be interesting. I've also heard that apparently the twins, the avatar is like a twin. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know if they're both avatars or if it's just one of them is the avatar, but I can definitely see how they could make two avatars based off you find out a little bit more about the avatar spirits and stuff, and there's like a good one and a bad one. So I can see how they could potentially be two avatars, but yeah, I'm interested to see how they approach it. I imagine that, um, like we see in Korra, just because you don't have bending, doesn't mean you can't put up a good fight with all the technology and stuff that they do introduce. So it'd be interesting to see how that's progressed as well. Like if bending is like still the best way to sort of fight, or if like everyday people have just become so adept at being able to deal with benders that it's really equal footing now. It'd be
Hmm.
interesting.
Well, I've also heard the info that says that they're going to be twin protagonists, and from what I've heard, one is finds out that they're the Avatar as an Earthbender, and then the other one is also an Earthbender. So whether they reveal later on that that second twin is the other half of that Avatar, the good and the evil, that will be interesting because it's not really been done before. They have said that they're going to release 26 episodes and potentially split it into 2 seasons. So hopefully, when they bring that out, I think it's going to be very well received, but also something that a lot of the fans have been waiting for quite a long time.
Yeah, 100%.
Mm. And still following that 2D animation that they're well known for, and I think that everybody loves. And with the oversaturation of, not that I'm complaining, but the oversaturation of 3D animated, computer animated movies and TV shows, I think it's always awesome to go back to that 2D style, because even watching book one and book two of the Avatar, the Last Airbender series that was made like in the mid 2000s, they still hold up today. Like I think they're really, really well drawn.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like, especially with the original series, you can see when they use they do like the 3D sort of animation for like the Fire Nation tanks and the blimps and stuff like that. Yeah, you see. So it's sort of interesting. They sort of weave it in here and there, but it still definitely like holds up. In Korra, they use a lot more of the 3D animation, still mixed with 2D, but you can really tell when it switches from the 2D to the 3D.
Yeah.
Sometimes can be a little bit jarring, but it's all up to personal preference. Some people love it, some people don't. But I agree with you that the 2D animation, we really don't see enough of it anymore, and I feel like it makes sense because when you have the 3D one, it's easier to, like, if you make mistakes, go back and fix it. The computers can do a lot of the computing for you, whereas the 2D one's very much like hand drawn and a lot longer process. So I understand the logistics behind it all, but yeah, when you do see those 2D animations, they are quite, like, they're just good to look at.
Yeah, exactly right. We've talked about a lot of the things that are coming out that people can't access, but currently they've also released, which was released in 2024, a novel called The Reckoning of Roku. I know you're a fan of some of the novels. Have you read that one yet?
No, so I actually saw it at the bookstore when I was there the other day. I have been looking at it. So obviously, I've got both the Kyoshi ones, both the Yangchin ones, and then the Roku one I'm looking to get. But I'm still like on the last Yangchin book because I've just been pretty busy and reading hasn't been at the top of my priority. But definitely will be getting it because I know there's some pretty good information there about Roku, and then obviously you learn a little bit about Kyoshi as well. So I'm very excited to jump into that. But yeah, it's just something I haven't got around to yet.
Yeah, no, it's set during the Avatar Roku era, obviously, and it's also featuring Gyatso as well. So Gyatso plays a part in the book. There's also heaps of comic books that have been released for Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's one set in the era of Aang, the Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer, which is a story about Iroh, and there is also the Mystery of Penquan Island, which follows Mako and Bolin as they travel to the islands there. So if you are desperate to get some Avatar in your life and you're waiting for these series to drop and you haven't rewatched the series for the 150th time, then you can get your hands on some of those books to have a little bit of a look at as well. All right, let's jump into some character arcs for book two, Luke. So,
All right, let's do it.
first of all, if anybody hasn't realized, we are going to be spoiling everything from book two and probably everything from book one as well. I haven't seen all of book three. As we mentioned in book one, I'm watching these for the first time at the humble age of 35 because of a lot of friend recommendations, but especially Luke telling me how great they are. And so far, I agree. So from here on out, there will be spoilers. Go and watch it and then come back and listen to this episode. All right. So with our characters in in book 2. We arrive at these characters in, season 2, episode 1, and Aang is really exploring. Let's start with Aang. He's really exploring that avatar state that is revealed in the end of book 1, water, and he ends up going to an earth kingdom where he thinks he's safe, but then he learns a very important and valuable lesson in terms of how people view him as the avatar. So far it has been as a savior, but he was received very differently in this very first episode, and I think it was an interesting way to start the series because it pivots your perspective on the avatar and shows you a new way of how some people in the avatar world see this almost religious figure.
Yeah, yeah. I actually love the way the season 2 opens. I think that, like you said, it does give you a sort of shift on how people view like the Avatar. Some people see him as a religious figure. Some people see him as the bridge between the worlds. Some people see him as a weapon to use, in the war. So there's heaps of different heaps of different people see the Avatar in several different aspects. But the thing I like the most about the opening of this book is that up until this point, you know that when his eyes and his tattoos glow, you think, okay, like stuff's getting real now. Like he's gonna, he ain't messing around, and he just seems to have limitless power when he's in that form. But I think what I really like about it is that the show straight away, you can see the quality of the animation is like bumped up from season 1, but also the themes as well that they introduce straight away in episode 1 of season 2 is like incredible. So what I'm really talking about is the weight, like they add stakes to our heroes. Like having limitless power is all well and good, but if it's just like unlimited power, then it's just every fight he gets into his avatar state, he wins. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's no like stakes. There's no like, okay, the audience can sort of get dulled by that if you just keep doing the same thing again. But what I like is when he has that spirit right with Roku, and he goes, the avatar state is like a mechanism. It's all your past lives channeling the energy through you, and you're at your most powerful, but also at your most vulnerable. And then, if you're killed when you're in the avatar state, the cycle of the avatar will be broken and it will cease to exist. Like that's crazy good, like stakes and weight of a form that we used to think could just do anything, but now you're just like, oh, actually, he can't just use it willy-nilly, because if he does get like struck down, then that's it. Like there's no more avatar. So I think that's a really great way of like opening up the first, like this season.
I agree with you, and I hadn't really thought about it until you put it that way, because there has been a lot of characters in the media that we consume all the time that just get too powerful, and then the writers just really don't know what to do with them. We've seen it with Miss Marvel in Avengers Endgame. They conveniently put her off to the side and said she's dealing with things in space, because if she was at Earth, she'd just destroy everything that came into contact, and there would be real no stakes through the movie. So I think that this was a really clever way to negate that, but also imagine being responsible and being the one who ended the legacy of the Avatar for everybody based on a mistake you made. So I think that adds not only weight to the audience who says there's some real risk here when he's, losing his shit and going into the Avatar phase, but there's also just that as Aang himself, because we know that he's a character that can be quite emotional, and he's only just starting to bear the weight of responsibility. But once he does in that way, I think it's something that he would take to heart and take quite seriously, because he does have that burden of responsibility, which he starts to learn and grow through as he started as like a lighthearted sort of pacifist. He definitely becomes more conflicted through this book.
Yeah, 100%. And another thing too that like we should mention as well, that like you said, he starts the series like pretty goofy, and then as it goes on, he sort of gets conflicted with all the responsibility. But also he can't, like at this point in the series, like he can't control what he does when he's in that avatar state. He gets sort of like possessed, and then he just does things, and then he comes to and like looks around at the end of the episode and is like, what have I done to this Earth Kingdom? Like I've just like destroyed it all. And he's like not really aware of what he's doing. So that's another thing too. Like imagine having all this power, but then you're just like someone, like you're in the backseat, you're not actually conscious of what you're doing. It's just being taken for a ride. So like that's pretty scary as well.
Yeah, I think it was definitely well planned, because there would have been some people asking the question, if he can transform into that and just destroy everybody, why doesn't he go to the Fire Nation right now and just wipe out all their tanks? So
which is what the general does. He goes, we can attack the Fire Nation now with you leading the way as the Avatar state. And it sounds like a great idea because at the end of the book one, you see him become a koi fish with the ocean spirit, and he decimates the whole fleet, Fire Nation fleet. So you think, well, what are we waiting for? Let's just go right now. But once again, they just nail it with like the storytelling and the world building. And I also love that in this episode you have the parallels of Aang, and then you have the parallels of Zuko, and then you get introduced to like one of my favorite villains, Azula, as well. Completely different from what we've experienced in the show thus far as well.
yeah, I think they definitely kicked it off really, really well. But Aang sort of goes on this journey as well, because that's when he starts to realize the weight of his responsibility. And then he learns that he has to try and control that power. He's still on his avatar journey, so he needs to actually go through the process of learning how to bend all the elements. And I've heard, because you can't live in this day and age and not get any spoilers. So I'd always heard of Toph, but I had never seen any episodes with her. I never saw anything about her. I know that she was a fan favorite as well, and she premieres in this episode, or in this series as well, in the episode 6, The Blind Bandit. Do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown of Toph and her relationship with Aang and what she does for Aang through the series?
Yeah, 100%. So Toph, like you said, fan favorite. You can see why she's like an absolute badass, and everything she does, she's so good. But yeah, she's like the polar opposite to Aang. Like Katara even says it as well. Like the opposite to water is fire, so the opposite to air is earth. But not just in the way the bending works, but also in the way that they think as well. Like airbenders are pacifists for the most part. They like to avoid it. Like they like to avoid conflict, and that he only use like violence as like self-defense, last resort. Then you have earthbenders that are like stubborn, headstrong, happy to take on a fight. They're like a rock, for lack of a better word. And it's just that those two ways of thinking really come to a head, especially when he's trying to learn earthbending from Toph, and Toph's just like, just take it head on. Like you'll never learn if you don't do this head on. And then he keeps avoiding the rock, and he won't bend it. And she calls him Twinkle Toes because he's light on his feet, and she's very obviously she's blind, so the way she sees is through the vibrations of the earth. The heavier you are, the more noise you make, the easier it is for Toph to sort of get to you and understand what you're doing. So having someone like Toph that challenges the way Aang thinks about not just like fighting, but bending, and also how he approaches things. Like to be a great earthbender, you probably have to think how an earthbender would think. You know what I mean? So having Toph there continuously challenging Aang on like who he is as a person, how to approach situations, I think that's like really good for his character arc and growth as well. But also Toph learns things from Aang and Katara as well, and Sokka. Like she obviously being an only child, being a rich only child, being very sheltered for most of her life, apart from when she snuck out to do the wrestling tournaments, which is awesome, by the way. She's been very sheltered in that sense, so she also doesn't know how to be around people and be a part of a team. It's always her. So I think she learns a lot from Aang and Zuko, and not Zuko, and Sokka.
Yeah, I think so too. And the best thing that I saw, being of a teaching background, is looking at how Toph approached her training with Aang, because Aang's teachers previously had very much pandered to him or done a gentle approach, or they try to teach him lessons through the nuance of hyperbole and metaphor. Like they try to get him to do something Karate Kid style. If you wax on and wax off, you learn how to block and things like that. Toph is very direct in her way. If he does something that's incorrect, she will give direct feedback, and sometimes it's abrasive, like pouring gravel down the side of a hill. And there's an episode in this book that I watched, and he doesn't take that feedback well because he's not used to it. But in the end, I feel like he learns to accept that sometimes feedback doesn't come to you how you would like it, but also her intentions were very well meant, and she's trying to help him. And I think they go through this process of finding a happy medium with each other. And I think, Aang realizes through this that learning doesn't always come in the way that he wants, but also through that episode, he realizes that power doesn't always look what you expect it to look like, because Toph is very unassuming.
Yeah, very much so. And to add on that too is that like up until this point, everything that Aang's done, he's sort of excelled at. Like he's a master airbender at the age of like 11. He's picked up waterbending pretty well, and he was doing better than Katara at the start. He was doing things that made Katara frustrated because she couldn't do them. So up to this point, he's pretty much like had no issues with mastering airbending, and then obviously getting the hang of waterbending really, really quickly. But then he comes to earthbending, and he can't. He's not getting it straight away. So I think that also leads to part of his like frustration as a character. Like, he's never had to actually work at something for
Yeah.
long periods of time. It's always just really come to him.
Yeah, I think that really works for him as well, because I think this book as a whole, book two, is a book where Aang learns through challenge. I think that's especially poignant in the episodes where he loses Appa. There's some emotional challenge through that. Appa's lost days and the Lake Logai episode as well. When he goes without and he actually realizes some of the consequences of this adventure that he's doing, he does take those moments where he falls back into having those childlike emotions where he lashes out at those near him. He can't fully control or contain himself. And he's literally driven one track minded to get Appa back, despite the fact that, the world may be relying on him as the avatar. It becomes very personal to him in that moment. And, he hits this major turning point, and he shows how grief can compromise your values on occasion as well. So I think those few episodes was really good learning for Aang as well.
Yeah, like it definitely. I think he's challenged the most in this book, in the way of growing as a person and whatnot. So I definitely agree with you there.
And when it comes to using that avatar state, and when he's got this, he has to choose that detachment from Katara. He's taught that he has to have that detachment. That's really hard for him as well. Did you want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. Like obviously, towards the end of the book, he goes to see the guru. I think it's Guru Patik or something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly. But yeah, he is learning to unblock his chakras so he can go in and out of the avatar state, at will. Which as viewers, you just like, oh, so ready for this. Like, it's sort of, from the start of book one. From the start of book two, when Roku told him about the avatar state, and now he's finally getting the teaching on how to control it. You think, oh, this is gonna be awesome, and they deal with it like a lot of. I really enjoy the stuff with the guru because it actually doesn't just like he speaks about things that you could potentially relate with everyday people, like people in the real world. Like the Earth chakra deals with survival, and it deals with survival, but it's blocked by fear. A water chakra deals with pleasure, but it's blocked by guilt. And as when he goes through all these chakras, and he goes, think about what are you guilty of, and then like he has a flashback of him burning Katara or him like leaving his people, to perish, and like they go through all these chakras, and it's just so good because you're just like, oh man, like first of all, it's hit me in the feels, but they're related all to things he's actually been through, and you forget that he's been like, they start going through these chakras, and you're just like, oh, does he feel shame? Does he do this? Then then he has the flashbacks, and you're like, oh wow, he does. He's gone through all this stuff, and to see him sort of liberate himself with those chakras is so good. But then obviously it comes to the last chakra, deals with the cosmic energy, and it's blocked by earthly attachments, I think it is, and you have to let go of everything that attaches you to the earth. And then he starts thinking of Katara, and then he starts pushing back. He's like, why would I let go of her? I love her, blah blah blah. And then he has that moment where he's like, okay, starts focusing in, and he has like the whole ethereal thing with the big version of himself he's walking towards, and he sees Katara's having like, she's in trouble, and then he leaves, and then the guru's just like, if you leave now, you're not gonna be able to go into it at all because you've locked the chakra. Like it's not blocked, it's locked. So, and then he still decides to leave because he just can't let go of Katara. And it makes sense when you think about it because, they allude to the fact that like the love that he has for this people and these people have for him has just been sort of reincarnated into Katara. So you can understand why he doesn't want to let that go. But, at the end of the day, he does, and we see what happens.
I think it's brilliant because it's obviously very contextual to the Avatar world and mythos, but that's very much a lesson and a learning that lots of people go through as well. And it's been used in lots of different media also. But I think we are reminded in this moment just how much Aang has been through at such a young age. And it comes, the Guru, that episode is episode 19. It comes at the very end, just before episode 20, which is the Crossroads of Destiny, where Aang does sort of learn a very valuable lesson. So it's almost like that, like how series used to do those recap episodes before the finale. But I always used to hate them because they're recapping a lot of the things that I already know. But in this way, it was done in a very, very clever way, to the point where I think that not only did it reveal more about Aang's character, but it gave us some things that people could think about in terms of, how they process grief, or how they process love, or the value that they place on duty over the people that they care about. So I think Aang is going through some very human emotions, and that's what's amazing about the Avatar, is that he's just like a normal kid that's got all of these amazing sort of abilities and responsibility that's been thrust on him as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
All right, and then we get to the Crossroads episode, where Aang is struck down by Azula's lightning, and it's almost like he learns that the path to enlightenment through this is not linear, because he does suffer a major setback. And we said the theme of Aang's journey through this is challenge. He definitely hits one when he meets Azula.
Yeah, yeah. So let's just get into Azula a little bit here, because
Yeah.
we can't speak about Azula without first talking about her relationship with Iroh, Zuko, and then May and Ty Lee. All three characters, May, Ty Lee, and Azula, great additions to the show. I think the best thing about May and Ty Lee is that they're very opposite of each other. May is very gloomy and pessimistic, whereas Ty Lee's very like positive centric. Looking at the bright side of things, always
Whimsical.
happy.
She's really whimsical. Yeah.
But you can also see that great as well, because up until this point we've really only seen like Sokka as the main non-bender, but then we see May and Ty Lee, and May and Ty Lee are holding their own against Katara, Aang, and they have no bending at all. And obviously we learn in the season as well that Ty Lee has ability to block. She's a chi blocker, so she can do the pressure points and block your points in your body, and then you can't bend like for a certain period of time. So that's like pretty scary as well as a bender, like not being able to use the only thing that you can use. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then obviously we've got Azula, which is like she's so good. Like when you first introduce her, she's just like the complete opposite to Zuko. When you first meet Zuko, he's like training with his uncle and he's getting frustrated because he's like, I want to learn the next set. I want to learn the next thing. But then you meet Azula and she's like, you see for the first time she's lightning bending, and you're just like, what's happening right now? She's like bending lightning. And then, the two twins go, only a hair out of place. And she's like, it's not good enough. I need to be perfect. And then like again, when she pulls in the ship to dock at the Fire Nation set up in the Earth Kingdom, and she goes, the tides won't allow us to dock the ship. And she goes, I'm not familiar with the tides. Did the tides come out in the ship? And he goes, no. And he's like, would the tides think twice about like smashing up against the rocky shore, or should you like talk to me because I'm still mulling it over? Like just absolutely bad. Like just doesn't take anything from anyone.
Yeah.
And then, she gets to, even the way she approaches this with Zuko and Iroh, she gets to them, she goes, Father wants you home, he misses you, he regrets your banishment. And it's not only until the head guard goes, oh, taking the prisoners home, and then they're like, then they realize it's all a trap. And then you have that against Zuko as well. Like at the end of the last book, he goes, my sister was born lucky and I was lucky to be born. And you just sort of see the parallels in that episode. Like Zuko's angry, he's trying to get to her, and she doesn't even fight back. She's literally just dodging, and then she starts doing lightning, but then Iroh comes and redirects it like the badass he is. But then that starts Iroh and Zuko's journey in the season too. Now they know like they're not wanted by the Fire Nation. They're not just banished. They're just like they actively want to be taken back and put in jail. So now they cut their little ponytails,
their hair ties,
yeah, which
very
is
symbolic.
like, yeah, very symbolic, especially royalty in the Fire Nation. Cut them and goes down the river, and then we meet a very different Iroh and a very different Zuko, especially Zuko. He goes through such a big character arc in this season, touching on one of my favorite episodes of the season, Zuko Alone. He starts seeing that obviously this is when he's taken back, he's left Iroh and he's gone his own way, and he starts to see that the Fire Nation isn't this great marvelous nation. They're sharing all their like prosperity with the world. Like people hate the Fire Nation, and he starts saying that like even Earthbender, like the Earth military, they like prey on villagers that don't make enough money, and they like overtax them and overtake their food, and like then you have just he just starts seeing that the world's more nuanced and like good and bad, and you can start seeing that he starts having conflicting like emotions in himself on like what he wants to do, who he wants to be, because you can tell from the very beginning of the show that he's not just a one-track character, and he's not like Azula. He has a conscience, and he's definitely has that conflict in his own body of like being good or bad, and that obviously reflects as well with his scar as well. You know, you've got his good and bad side, so it's very symbolic of his journey this season.
I can't agree more. I think that the introduction of Azula not only gave us a 100% true antagonist to this series, but I think it also juxtaposes well with the character of Zuko, and it shows us exactly what Fire Lord was expecting when he wanted an heir, and what Zuko is, trying to live up to and be, and is always failing to do so based on that conscience that you talked about. Azula she's so strategic in this book, to the point where she's able to topple Ba Sing Se when generations of Fire Lord or Fire military people beforehand were not able to do that. And she just takes utter command of everybody that's around her through her mannerisms with them, but also her command of her bending ability. She's so powerful at this fear-based control that she uses. And that is also very poignant in the fact that Zuko is a character who now sees through the cracks of the Fire Nation, whereas Azula is completely indoctrinated by what she believes that they can be. She's very power hungry. She throws Team Avatar off balance in one of the early episodes, The Chase, where she actually has a confrontation with Zuko and Iroh, and she holds her own completely. She just a very amazing addition to the series, and I think it's exactly what the book needed.
Yeah, she's a prodigy.
100% a prodigy. And she's brilliant. She's ruthless. She's a perfectionist in her way as well. And she's also emotionally detached, which is the biggest differing point from her and Zuko. Hard to believe they were raised in the same house.
Yeah, no, definitely. You can tell one was raised by father and one was raised by the mother in a sense. Even though I know Zuko's mum obviously had a hand in raising her as well, but yeah, just two different outlooks in how they perceive the world and the people in it, I guess.
Yeah. And I think with Zuko, if we dive into him a little bit more, he's obviously angry at the start of this season as well. He fully detracts himself from the Fire Nation, but he's always got that undertone of seeking his father's approval that doesn't go away. And, he goes through the teachings with Uncle Iroh. They get extremely close. Zuko alone, by the way, is the highest rated episode of this book, according to IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. It is the one where he realizes that he may go ahead and do the right thing. He may go and help the people that the Fire Nation has destroyed. And it plants that seed that we see flower in the very end episode, because even though he did all the right things afterwards, he is still shunned by the people that he helped because of his history, because of his lineage, because of who he is. And that leaves him like feeling devastated, but also sort of wondering what the point of it is, I guess you could say. Like, he goes through a lot of this sort of turmoil, and then towards the very end, you can see him offer that betrayal to join Azula in her quest once more. I think without that episode, without that little seed that showed how the community react to Zuko, despite the fact that he may choose to do the right thing, without that, I think this turn at the end may not have been as well received, or as
the payoff wouldn't be as good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I completely agree, and I think like even like you said at the start when he was learning with Iroh, and Iroh he goes, I want to learn how to do lightning, and he keeps blowing up in his face, and he goes, why is it blowing up in my face like everything always does? And then Iroh goes like, I'm gonna like, he's like, you gotta let go of your shame, and he's like, I'm not ashamed, blah blah blah, and he goes, I'm as prideful as ever, and then like Iroh goes, like, Prince Zuko, pride is not the opposite of shame, it's source. Like, just a banger quote from Iroh there. And then he goes and he teaches Zuko about the four nations, and that how like taking knowledge from four different places as opposed just to taking it from one can help you be a better, not just a better better bender, but a better person. And then obviously he teaches Zuko how to redirect lightning. But Zuko's still not happy. He's like, if you won't give me lightning, then I'll go out and find some myself. And then obviously he's has that scene where it's like raining and it's thunderstorming and he's like screaming at the heavens, like, come on, hit me, I can take it. Now I can give it back, And he starts crying. You can just see he's got so much like built up like turmoil still inside of him. He just doesn't know what to do. And then it really comes at a head too in the episode. I think it's like Lao Guy when he finds the Avatar's bison, and this is probably one of my favorite like parts of the season. And then Iroh goes, he finds him, he's like, "Ooh, I wonder who this could be." And it's like, "How'd you find me, Uncle?" And it's just like, now that you find the Avatar's bison, what are you gonna do with it? And he goes, "I gotta, get it out of here." And then he starts very rare, like Iroh moment where he screamed, like starts getting angry. He goes, "And then what?" Like, this is the same thing that happened in North Pole. If you'd like you had him and then you had nowhere to go, and it's like I would have figured something out. It's like, no, if you didn't, like if his friends didn't grab you, you would have frozen to death, like you would have died. And he goes, "Stop it, Uncle, stop it, blah blah." And he's like, "I'm begging you, please look within yourself, start asking yourself the real questions. Who are you? What do you want? This is a destiny that someone else has put out for you, not the one that you want." And then that really, like, he gets angry, slams his swords down. It's just such a good, such a good passage. Such a good passage. You can just see it's like the way Toph challenges Aang, Iroh challenges Zuko in this season. It's just so good. It's literally so good. I love it.
Yeah, and I think that in this book, Toph and Aang's relationship get closer because they're able to find a middle ground, whereas Iroh and Zuko come to a head to the point where by the end of this episode, they see each other so completely differently, where one goes one way and the other goes a completely different direction. Like in the episode 18, The Earth King, when Zuko starts to experience that sort of fever dream and he has that sort of sickness, he does something good because he eventually does sort of return Appa in his own way. And it's almost like it's that symbolic battle between the old Zuko and the new sort of better self that he's becoming. That sickness is like a metaphor for the turmoil that's going on within him, but that trauma just still sits within him where he's seeking that approval. And in the end, he ends up betraying Iroh, and he sort of stands next to Azula in that victory pose at the end, and you can see the look on her face is complete and utter pride. But if you look at Zuko, you can tell he feels like he's made like a catastrophic emotional mistake.
I think he's questioning everything that he made the choice, but then as soon as he's done that, he's like, "What have I done? Have I made the right choice?" And, it's different because he's had Iroh on his side always, no matter what Zuko said to him or the way he's spoken to him. Zuko has spoken to Iroh really bad in the previous episodes, like in book 1 and book 2, and Iroh's always just stuck with him. But then Zuko looks at him and Iroh sort of just like puts his head down and closes his eyes, and then Zuko's like, Iroh is sort of his moral compass in a way, and because Iroh doesn't want to borrow him, then Zuko's like, have I made the right decision now? Like, I've made this decision, but like, you can tell that he's just really not sure if he's done the right thing.
Yeah, it's sort of like he's been chasing this approval all of this time, and it feels like that is the attainable thing that he absolutely wants, and he's working so hard to get it, and he's taking advantage of the fact that he's got Iroh there by his side through thick and thin. Then when it's a classic case of when you finally get what you want, you look around and you realize it's not as great as what you thought it was, especially when he looks around and to his side, Iroh's no longer there. So he gets that value, and he realizes that he, in this moment, had chosen fear of abandonment and legacy over the love and growth that he had with his uncle Iroh. And that's why I loved his arc where he was running the tea shop with Iroh. I thought him in Ba Sing Se running that tea shop, that was perfect Zuko. That was him beginning to move on through a like a healing sort of journey. You could see him beginning to work through some things. He actually took some time for himself in one of my favorite episodes, The Tales of Ba Sing Se.
Oh yeah, what a good episode!
Oh man, it's just that hits you in the feels. That one.
Can we really, after you mentioned that, we got to stop and talk about it? Like,
I think so. It's
so good. It's literally like, you think the episode starts and you go, Tales of Ba Sing Se. This sounds like this could be a throwaway. Yeah, it sounds like this could definitely be a throwaway episode. And then, like all the stories are good in their own right, but obviously the Iroh story is. Everyone's a gangster until Iroh starts singing, and then everyone's crying.
I 100% agree. And The most special part about this is obviously this is dedicated to Mako, who was the voice of Uncle Iroh as well. At the end, that's the little end tag credit.
Yeah, in honor of Mako, I believe it is. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
exactly.
it's crazy too because like obviously that was his final appearance as Aro the VA, but then obviously it's continued by Greg Baldwin in the next season. I'm not going to get into book 3 because this is about book 2, but I think Greg does such an amazing job taking over from Mako. Like it's for me, it's sort of hard to especially when I was a kid, I had no idea that the VA changed because he does such a good
Yeah.
honor to that VA. Obviously, he's not the same, but pretty close to it. But yeah, no, it was such a touching episode, and just when he goes, "I wish I could have helped you the way I've helped everyone else," and you just like little soldier boy leaves from the vine. You just like,
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps now. And I like how he had sung that previously in his little segment of the Tales of Ba Sing Se. He'd
mm,
sung that previously when he was helping somebody out, just sort of casually, but you can see how emotional that song really does hit him and how special it is when he does that ceremony for his son. And you'd
yeah.
heard previously before that, he'd lost a son in the battle, but he really holds so much like guilt about that, and
Mm.
he's honoring
And,
him
you,
in such a special way.
and you can see, especially out of this episode, you can see why he's so like attached to Zuko because it's like the son that he lost. This is
Mm,
like a son that he can like this is and especially the last 3-4 years he's been traveling around exclusively with Zuko, and you don't travel around with someone for 3-4 years and not
yeah.
get that attachment. So
Exactly. And I
yeah,
think
no,
that's why it's simply 5 episodes later when he is eventually betrayed by Zuko, it hits him so hard in this sort of moment as well. But this episode also highlights elements of the other characters as well that we kind of don't really get to see. Like we saw that Toph and Katara were having trouble sort of getting along because they were the two girls in the Avatar group, but they were two completely different girls, and they never really sort of got along. But in this episode, The Tales of Ba Sing Se, they enjoy a girls' day out together. And again, they learn to embrace their differences and actually come together and blossom a friendship.
and just on that too, this is a little tidbit that I don't know if you picked up on, but um I really like this episode too, and that little segment of the episode because obviously Toph goes like to Katara goes Toph like you're actually really pretty, and then Toph goes like I've never really cared about what anyone thinks about me, but like she's obviously still gets upset when people are like mean to her because she's still a little girl, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Doesn't matter how good she is at earthbending. Then Katara goes like you know you're really pretty, and she goes like really, and she goes yeah you really are, and the thing I like about that is that Toph can tell if she's lying. So obviously she knows she's not. She is telling the truth because you know how
Yeah.
Toph can tell people who's lying by their
Yeah.
heartbeat
Yeah.
to the thing. So like it's really like even better when Katara says that and like she can tell that she's telling the truth. So that's just
Mm.
some really nice.
Yeah. I love how they built that connection too, because I think Toph had been in the series for about 10 episodes previous to that, and we had seen her being very cold towards Aang, and she's kind of like the shake up that the Aang crew needed in terms of adding an extra character. I think they couldn't have done better than with Toph. And it helped them grow to the point where it brought out something new in each of the original three, in Katara, Sokka, and also Aang.
Mm.
And yeah, the Tales of Ba Sing Se, it just takes a moment to look at each character, and it tells us every character we're looking at here has a story, and every person carries burdens that we might not know about. And that's a lesson you can take in life as well. You don't know why people are acting the way that they're acting. We say in the schoolyard all the time, people come to school with a backpack full of things that you don't know. And we're not talking about a backpack with their lunchbox in it. We're talking about we don't know what happened to them this morning. We don't know why they're acting angry when they're usually acting quite happy. You really have to take that moment to get to know them. And this episode allowed us to do that with a lot of the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it showed us that connection sort of matters most.
Yeah, 100%. I actually can't get enough of like these little character moments that we have, and obviously we are chatting a little bit before the episode started, but I think book 2, while it's not my most favorite book out of the 3, I still think book 3 is my favorite just for other reasons we'll get into in the next episode. But I think book 2 definitely is the best in terms of storytelling and pacing. I think that in book 1 you had the obligation of introducing all these characters, introducing the world, the lore, what you can and can't do, the limits, the boundaries, all that type of stuff. So it sort of suffers a little bit from that. Not suffers, but the story it's sort of dictated by that.
Yeah,
And book
has a
three,
job
you
to
have
do.
and book three, it's got the job of wrapping up the series, tying up all the loose ends, and obviously finishing up all those character arcs. Whereas book two just has the ability to world build a little bit more, go into have these like little character moments and have like all these different stories. Like you have the drill episode, you have the library, you have the serpent's pass, you have when he goes to the guru, you have all these like episodes in this book that are just free to do what they want because they've already established all these, the swamp even, like all these episodes, they're just so good because they're not burdened by having to do anything. The only thing they have to do is get from point A to point B. Aang needs to learn earthbending, and that's sort of that's all we're expecting out of this book, but we get a whole lot more, which I think benefits a lot. So I think, while not my favorite book personally, I can definitely see why it would be a lot of people's favorites, and it definitely, I think, best for pacing.
Yeah, I think so. I haven't seen book three, obviously, but this is definitely mine. I do like book one and can see why it's so highly rated. But I think I'm a really big character guy. It's no secret on the Fandom Portals podcast. If there is a good character journey throughout a movie, I'll rate it very highly, to the point where if the character arc serves as story, I'm happy with that, as opposed to like a plot occurring, just a character growth. And through this, we see character growth from start to finish. No character begins the exact way that they finish at the end of this book, which is what I love about it most.
Well, another episode I like as well is the return to Omashu episode, because what I really appreciate about this too, that I appreciate about book two and just the series in general, is that up until this point as well, we've been in book one, and in pretty much every place we go to, it's either an Earth Kingdom, a water tribe, or it's like a little village that's been like occupied by the Fire Nation. So we go to Omashu. It's obviously an Earth Kingdom. You meet Boomy, blah 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 blah. They go back to Omashu to learn from Boomy earthbending. That's what he wants to go to. That's his first like point of contact. But when they get there, they realize that it's been invaded. It's been taken over by the Fire Nation, which I think is another positive for the show, because it makes us realize, oh wait, there actually is a war going on.
Being off camera.
That we're not like, obviously we're following our main protagonist, but like this one really hits home. It's like, well, while they've been going to the North Pole, the Fire Nation's actually been doing shit. They've actually been going to places. Exactly. They're still invading places, and I think seeing Omashu being occupied by the Fire Nation really hits home. It's just like, well, just because like we're thinking, yeah, they're going to go to Omashu, it's going to be the same, but then it's like it's actually now occupied, and it's like it's really like a lived-in world, and things are happening. So there's a war happening, people are dying, people are getting their homes taken away from them, and I think this really illustrates that, which is another great thing towards this season and the show. And then also Avatar Day, I think it's a severely underrated episode. You go to this town, they're celebrating the Avatar, well, what we think they're celebrating. It's like, oh yeah, they got Aang, they got Roku, and they got Kyoshi, statues that they're marching around, and then they start burning them, and it's like, what the hell? And then you find out more about, what happened with what's the name? Commander Chin, I think it was. I can't remember who.
You've hit names on the head so far. Let me look.
Killing Chin. I think is it Chin? Because it goes into Kyoshi killing their old commander Chin back in the 300-400 years ago, and then obviously you have Sokka doing his detective work, which is pretty funny, and then you have that moment where Kyoshi actually takes over Aang, and he goes, yeah, look, I did kill Chin. Like, obviously he fell to his death, but like she doesn't see it any other way. She would have killed him anyway. So yeah, he pretty much admits to it, and then they go, what happened? And he's like, oh, you kind of confessed to killing Chin, and it's like, oh, and then the Fire Nation comes, and then he gets community service. And I just think it's a like cool episode. While it doesn't really progress the plot too much forward, you like get to learn a little bit more about a past life in Kyoshi, and how Kyoshi Island was made, which is a place we went to in the first season. So just a cool episode I like.
Oh, yeah, and I think it also serves as giving us a little bit of history in terms of the Avatar's past ancestors, but also the impact that has on various different cultures around this world, because, not everybody loves the Avatar. Some people have been wronged by the Avatar, and it goes to show the impact that it has on the current Avatar as to what your past live iterations had done. So it also deepens the stakes for Aang in terms of what his actions are going to do in this season and how he is going to impact the next avatar that comes after him or the world. So it just goes to show, things that happen in history aren't forgotten, and the things that he's doing as part of his role as the avatar really do matter. So I think that's what it did for me. It really sort of expanded that mythos of what the avatar was to other people, and also how the past life, even though it wasn't his responsibility, he has no responsibility and has to take no accountability for it because it wasn't him that did it. But due to his role and responsibility as the avatar, he once again was taking on the responsibility of somebody else and having to answer for that. So, and that's what happens as a result of the avatar. He's doing lots of these things this season that he doesn't really want to do, but he has that responsibility due to his title. So I think it's a nuanced episode as well, but I just think it's so smart how they laid the episodes out, because it gave us time in the first 5 or so episodes between the Avatar state and the Avatar day to really explore some of the nuanced part of the characters. Like even in the Cave of Two Lovers, we get to really deepen in Aang and Katara's relationship with one another.
Yeah.
And it really sort of steps up into that episode where you do realize there is this unspoken thing, as Star-Lord and Gamora would say, that they're sort of navigating through as young people. I wanted to talk as well about the political undertones that strike through this season, especially in the later episodes when they're actually in Ba Sing Se, and the Earth Kingdom is really sort of, they have a political agenda, and it's
still propaganda. Like
Yeah,
there's a lot of
exactly.
propaganda. Like there's everything on the outside world is fine. There's no war, blah blah blah. No one knows of the war. Like it's very. You come to this city, you think, oh, they're going to be so well prepared because it hasn't like fallen in 100 years. So you're like, oh, these guys really know what they're doing. But really, it's just a big ass wall that the Fire Nation can't. Mainly due to the time period, they like they have a drill in that episode. The drill, obviously, but that's like the first time they've actually had any like technology to get like you put fire up against a massive thick brick wall, nothing's gonna happen to it. So like up until this point you think the Ba Sing Se is going to be really well equipped, but it's just a really big wall and they haven't had to do much else. You know what I mean? Well, that's what it feels like to me.
They're all hiding behind their walls.
Yeah.
And then, Long Fang and Dai Li, they're the sort of heads of this, and they're almost not so much ignorant, but they're pushing the ignorance throughout. So there is no unrest through the city. It's like burying your head in the sand. Like the Avatar team go to try and enlighten them in this way, and it comes to a head when they find Jet in Ba Sing Se, and he's a return character from an episode in book 1. And, they end up discovering this sort of secret that's flooding throughout the city.
Brainwashed.
Yeah, brainwashed. And instead of having Ba Sing Se as being the biggest ally and probably defender to the Fire Nation, they're in a really vulnerable spot. And I think that, this is all the things that are going on politically in terms of this is a kid's show, so to speak, in quote marks. Like, I think it's got some really big themes to fill, and it was pretty brave at the time as well to put that sort of thing in to show that, people that are in charge aren't always right, for one, but for two, they're not always smart. So I think that was really
sometimes they're being used too. Like
exactly,
like he's like just a puppet really. And then obviously you have another thing I like about it is that you see the inner ring and outer rings of Ba Sing Se. You see the outer ring really poverty a lot. Like there's people are sort of, and like that's pretty big theme to tackle for a quote unquote kids show. So I think that's really interesting too, how they go through and you can sort of see when they're on the outer ring and then bit like ghetto-y, and then they go through the tunnel, they go to the second inner ring, and then it's much more pristine. People have nicer clothes, streets aren't as dirty. Like
it's very much ignorant to the struggles of what's happening on the outer rings too.
Yeah,
they don't
exactly.
Really care.
Yeah.
So much learning that's gone through. We usually in the Fandom Portals podcast, we usually do like a most valuable takeaway, and we talk about the 1 or 2 things that you learnt from the media. But I think like through this, we've talked so much about the lessons that all of these episodes deliver, and it's just so action packed. And I think that is why this series has lasted through the years and has continued on to generate lots and lots of spin-offs because it's generational.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like you said, the lessons you learn, and also just the 2D animation really lends itself to like holding up across the test of time. And then you've got episodes like the library when it connects back to book 1, how Zhao stumbled across a library, but then you find out that the Team Avatar have also like stumbled across the same library, and that's like really cool as well. You got like Upper's Last Days, which is just like sad, and and also a bit heartwarming, but mainly
Yeah.
sad. You got so many like little subplots going on that you sort of like when I go back and I think about this book, I forget how many layers there are to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like we could sit here and we could probably talk 30 minutes about each individual episode and what they bring and how good it is because that's how good
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
season is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's totally on point. In terms of, we know that book 2 is now coming to the Netflix show. We'll pivot a bit to that. Given how nuanced this show is and how many layers there are, how do you think they're going to go? Because I have not yet seen the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender. Does that Netflix adaptation of book 1 do it justice? Are you hopeful for book 2?
I don't know. I have to sort of separate myself from being an Avatar fan when I go into the live action show because obviously, you know, with a live action show, it's a really hard balance between trying to tell something a little bit new because I don't want to do exactly beat for beat as a show because then people are going to be like, well, it's just the same thing, you know.
Yeah,
But
what's the
then,
point?
yeah, but then obviously you don't want to change too much where it doesn't even feel like it's the reminiscent of the show that it's inspired by. I personally think there are some things I liked and there's some things I didn't like. I didn't like how they changed. Like, I just wish they would. I don't know. I can't. I always struggle to get my thoughts like out about my opinions out about the show because I think there are some things I really did like, but there's some things I think if it didn't have the Avatar name to it, I don't think it would have been as well received as it has been. I think it got a lot of eyeballs to it because there's a lot of fans of the original show. But I think, if they don't label it Avatar and they label it something else, they could probably change a few more things and you could probably market it as a whole different show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not I have to go into it as not an Avatar fan because if I try and go into it as an Avatar fan, the things I just don't like.
You pick out the faults, I guess. But it's really hard, because this is so beloved by a lot of people, and it's a perfect show, really. There are some episodes, like the lowest rated episode that I can see from this book on IMDb is 7.3. And that is still like 7.3 out of 10. And that is
What
still
episode's that?
that is the Avatar Day episode that we were talking about.
Oh, really?
Lowest rated. But a lot of them are averaging in the nines. So it's a very hard show to adapt, not only because of the nuance and the layers, but also because it was done so well the first time. It's hard to hit lightning in a bottle twice, really. So,
Yeah. I don't envy anyone who has to try and recreate or do a live action version of a show that is just so well beloved by so many people. So I think no matter what you do, you're gonna piss off some people.
yeah.
So I try to go into it with an open mind, but I usually try and separate the two because I think that especially after the original creators left the project, I'm just like, well, if it's not good enough that for their vision and they want to leave the show and they have their own Avatar studios now, then like it makes me think that what did they like? Obviously, they must have changed stuff that they weren't thought was going to be like non-negotiable. So
yeah.
I sort of I'm going to go into it with an open mind, but I feel like if I don't have any expectations, I can't be disappointed. So
that's a good way to look into it. And when we do book 3 on the podcast, we might be able to have a chat about how your reception of book 2 was on the live action front as well.
Very looking forward to the book 3. It's going to be a good chat, that one.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be good. We are just about to finish, but before we do, we had some listeners and some people from our Threads community send in some questions for us because they knew we were going to do an episode on Avatar Book 2. So we'll read some of those questions out and answer them for you now. If you do want to be a part of the podcast in terms of adding your question or your quote, or if you want to add your thoughts on some of the media that we're doing, we usually always what's the word I'm looking for here? We always show you our programming and tell you what's coming up next. So if you want to give us your opinion, then you can do so on our threads, which is at Fandom Portals. We're also on Instagram at Fandom Portals, or you can email us fandomportals@gmail.com. This question here comes from at Cactus Sipper. And this person says that if you had to show one episode of book 2 to somebody who just wants to experience the show for the first time, which episode would that be? And why?
Oh, it's a very good question. It's tough, especially from like being in book 2 because it's like such a middle point of the series.
Yep.
I think it would either have to be. I think this is going to sound like a very boring answer, but I feel like the first episode does a really good job of introducing us to a little bit more of the world again.
Avatar State.
But if I had to pick another episode to introduce people to it, I would. This is a really tough one. I'd probably say I want to go a bit of a different answer. But I want to say the Blind Bandit because I think the action points in that with all the earth bending and stuff. I think it's a really cool display of like what the animation is capable of and how fun it can be the fight sequences. So I'm gonna say either the Avatar State or the Blind Bandit.
I love that answer because the Blind Bandit, we didn't really talk about it, but that episode features Mick Foley as the Boulder, who's a direct ripoff of Dwayne Johnson The Rock, and it's just so fun to see just like a wrestling match in the world of Avatar. It shows that they've also commodified bending for one. Like they're making money off of this thing, and it is an awesome introduction to the character of Toph because it gives us the fact that she's got this dual identity where she is definitely living in the richer part of town and she's got that expectation upon her, but she also has these dreams and desires of her own to bend rock, to be the best, to have some sort of accolade. And I think it also is good. We didn't really touch on this either, but it's good because this is a character that has a physical impairment. She's vision impaired and she's just as powerful as anybody in this world. So I think it's good advocating for that too.
Yeah. And I wanted to say, Zuko alone or Tales of Basing Say for our first episode, but I think those episodes really lend themselves to you knowing the characters already. So introducing someone to these episodes, I feel like they just wouldn't hit as hard. So that's why I'm going to go for something a little bit more sort of general. So that way it just gives people an idea of like how fun the world can be.
Yeah, I think that's actually perfect. I don't think there's a better answer that we can come up with. If you haven't seen any of the Avatar and you're dipping your toe in, go and watch The Blind Bandit from Book 2, guys. It's episode 6. Luke told you to. So
that's a good one.
All right. Next person is Lotus Rules, at Lotus Rules, and they sent in a question that says, do you think Toph was Avatar Aang's best teacher that he ever had?
Ooh, good question. I definitely would say she is the most different teacher to anyone he's ever had. I definitely think, I don't know if she's the best teacher. I feel like he has got a lot of his wisdom and bending prowess from a bunch of different teachers, all excelling in their own sort of way. But yeah, I think you can make an argument that she's probably one of the best teachers he's ever had. But I would say that, again, another boring answer, but I'd probably say that you can see that throughout the whole series that he gets so many different like life lessons and abilities from his other masters that like they all add to like who he is as a person. Like, I wouldn't be able to say one best person, like there's one teacher that was the best, but as far as actual bending ability goes, I'd say that Toph is the best.
Yeah, because he's had Monk Gyatso, who was his airbending teacher, and then Katara is pretty much his waterbending master. Toph is the earthbending master that he's had, but he's also had some spiritual and philosophical mentors in the term of like his past lives, Avatar Roku being one, and then the Guru as well. So I think he meets them all in the exact point where he requires them most, Avatar. Yeah, go ahead.
So even Iroh when they're burrowing down to the catacombs underneath under the palace to rescue Katara and Zuko, and he goes, apparently you're really good at advice, and Iroh gives him just some words of wisdom and like even that, just a great teaching moment as well for him. So yeah, I definitely think to answer the question, as far as raw bending ability goes, I think Toph, probably is the best. But I think in the context of the whole show, he's got everyone he sort of comes across, gives him so much different variety in different ways.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer because I feel like Toph had the hardest job, as we spoke about before. Earthbending's opposite to airbending, and Aang was very resistant at the start as well. Yeah, I think that he's had lots of good teachers. Toph had the hardest job. That's my opinion on it anyway.
Yeah, I can agree with that 100%.
Okay, last question. This one, I've lost the username. This one comes from Juicehead67. Juicehead says, was Aang's choice to abandon his spiritual training for Katara in the Guru episode, was it necessary for him to assert his humanity?
Oh.
So I guess that question's kind of asking, it sort of highlights his internal conflict, as we sort of talked about before, his duty versus personal connection. And there is an argument to say that the thing that makes Aang strong is his connection to those people that he loves. There's more powerful things in the world than bending, and he's able to find strength through others and the love of others, or the love that he has for others. But we've seen lots of people who aren't benders go up against elemental benders and hold their own. So I think there's lots of different ways to exemplify strength. It's like that sort of Jedi conundrum, isn't it? Connections across mental clarity. Is it worth it? Is it something that Aang should have done?
Yeah, yeah. I yeah, that's a really interesting question. I feel like you pretty much nailed it on the head there, Aaron, but I definitely think, as Ari says as well, like he thinks he's very wise for picking love and connection over, cosmic energy and the avatar state. But yeah, yeah, I think I don't really have much more to add to that. I think you nailed it on the head there,
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Aaron.
We do have a question here about like Iroh, and if he sort of, like I said to you before we started recording, if Iroh had been the one if Iroh stayed and fought Azula and Zuko, how do you think it would have gone down? Do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
All right.
I think that like I personally think that if Iroh, like, because Iroh's always been the type of character who won't fight unless it's for a purpose or to like like self defense or to make a point type thing. Like it's never to just for the satisfaction of fighting. Like that's not
Mm.
who Iroh is, especially, well, at least not since we've known him in the series. Obviously, we don't know what he's done previously, before the series started. We're still involved with the Fire Nation, but like you see, I think he's going to have some big reservations about fighting Azula and Zuko in the catacombs at that point because Zuko's just betrayed him, but he also still sees him as his son, his surrogate son. So like, I think it's really hard for me to imagine Iroh going to the catacombs instead of Aang, Katara, and fighting Azula and Zuko. I just don't think he would. I just don't think he would. Obviously, he does fight them when Aang gets struck by lightning, and he jumps down and goes, "Go! I'll hold him off for as long as I can." And then he, like, as soon as Katara and Aang escape up the waterfall, he literally just stops fighting and lets himself get captured. So, I don't think Ari would actually fight Azula and Zuko. I just don't think that's where his character's at that point in the story.
Yeah, I think he stood the line that he was trying to teach Zuko to stand that line, and he obviously felt like he failed at that, so he stood that line physically. But I feel like he also felt a lot of uh, I don't want to say shame. Shame's not the right word, but like a sense of failure because he saw what Zuko had done and he thought that Zuko had come a lot further than that. So I think not only would he not fight in that instance to defeat Azula and Zuko, like he's not the kind to lay a beat down to teach you the lesson that he wants to teach, because I think he's wise enough to know that the best lessons are learned when you get to the conclusion yourself instead
Yeah.
of having it forced in front of you.
Yeah.
And I think in that moment, all he could do was just sit down and stop because he felt like he had also failed. So not only had he done the right thing and let the avatar go, but he also felt that sense of failure in what he was trying to his goal was, which was to guide and lead Zuko to do the right thing. So I think that's another reason why he probably wouldn't have
Yeah, he's
done
sad.
it.
Sad that Zuko picked the wrong choice, I guess.
Yeah.
And I know we got to talk about this, otherwise people are going to get angry at us. But Toph being able to metal bend at the end of the series,
Oh yeah.
go to moment, like so good. How cool! She's a metal
Yeah.
bender.
Yeah, and it opens up that, like we were talking about before, the additional sort of subset of bending to each of the four elements. And we saw Azula with lightning, but Toph being the one to actually bend that metal in a moment of like absolute desperation as well. For me, it opens up the door lore-wise to see like just how powerful she can get and just how much more she can do. Yeah, I think it's a good little addition that we saw. It's like a little tease, a little Easter egg to what's coming and what's happening next.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of what's happening next, that's all we have here for book 2 with my good buddy Luke. We are going to do an episode on book 3, and that'll happen when yours truly has finished watching those. I want to thank you so much, Luke. You are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Avatar. It's always great to talk to you about this kind of stuff. So thank you so much for joining us on the pod.
No, thank you so much. I also like that when you speak about some of the episodes, you have your own take on it that I don't necessarily I had never thought of before too. So it's nice to hear your takes on it, and it gives me another layer on top of a show that I already love. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that as well, and I thank you for your deep knowledge too, because you also see things in a very interesting way and depth wise towards the characters that I really never thought of on a first viewing. So I think it's good that we've got you, who's a very much sort of seasoned viewer of Avatar, and me, who's a fresh viewer. It's a good sort of dynamic for any people that are in between.
Yeah, I think it
Our
bounces off each
experiences.
other pretty well, like, the themes and the ideas. So, yeah, no, it's really good to hear your perspective as a sort of newcomer to the series.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for listening to the Fandom Portals podcast. Remember, guys, if you wanted to be a part of the show, you can do so by joining us on our socials, which is at Fandom Portals on Instagram and on Threads. You can email us any questions that you have at fandomportals@gmail.com. If you would like to sign up to our newsletter, you can do that. We'll send you one email a month. We're not annoying. We don't send you lots of spam. We'll only send you one a month, and that will give you all of the updates on the Fandom Portals podcast, everything that the hosts are doing, and everything that's coming up in the month ahead. It will also automatically give you an entry into any giveaways that we ever do. So if you wanted to do that, you can find us at www.fandomportalspodcast.com. And that is all from me. Love the fandoms, love Avatar. Go and watch The Blind Bandit.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
All
See
right.
ya.
See you guys.